"You're nothing," the billionaire roared, his voice echoing through the five-star restaurant like thunder. Every waiter froze. Glasses trembled. And yet, the young black waitress didn't flinch. She just looked at him, eyes calm but burning with something deeper, power. Then, as silence thickened, she stepped closer and said in a low, unshaken voice, "Then why do you work for me?" The billionaire's smirk vanished. A few guests gasped. The room that had worshipped his money suddenly felt like a courtroom, and he was on trial. Hey everyone, before we jump in, tell me, which city are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing where my stories reach. Globe showing Europe, Africa. And if you love stories where arrogance meets its reckoning, hit that subscribe button right now, because what's about to happen next will leave you speechless. Now let's begin. The golden chandeliers of Louvain's, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, shimmered like liquid fire. Every table whispered wealth, diamond watches, designer suits, and champagne that cost more than a week's rent. Yet amid the glitter, a quiet tension simmered. A young waitress named Maya Carter balanced a tray with elegance that came from years of working twice as hard for half as much. It was supposed to be an ordinary night. But when the door swung open and billionaire Vincent Cross entered, everything changed. The man carried himself like he owned the air, arrogant, commanding, eyes that measured people's worth before hearing a single word. He wasn't just rich, he was feared. People moved out of his way, like shadows retreating from light. Maya greeted him with her usual grace. "Good evening, sir. Table for one." Vincent's gaze flicked over her name tag, then back to her face. "You," he sneered. "You'll be serving me tonight." Maya nodded, keeping her voice steady. "Yes, sir. Is there a problem?" His laugh was sharp like glass. "A problem. Only that I expected someone who at least looked like they belonged here." The nearby diners went silent. Maya felt every stare slice into her, but she refused to bow. "I assure you, sir," she said softly, "I belong wherever I work hard enough to be." Vincent leaned back, smirking. "Cute. Tell me, what's it like being invisible? Serving people who make in an hour what you'll never see in a lifetime." That line hit her like a slap. But instead of breaking, Maya did what she always did. She smiled. Not the forced smile of a servant, but one filled with quiet knowing. "Sometimes," she replied, "it's satisfying to see how money can't buy manners." Gasps rippled through the room. The billionaire's jaw tightened. He snapped his fingers. "Manager." Her manager, Daniel, rushed over, nervous sweat glistening on his forehead. "Mr. Cross, is there an issue?" "There's an attitude problem on your floor," Vincent barked, pointing at Maya. "Fire her. Right now." Daniel froze. His eyes darted from Vincent's enraged face to Maya's calm one. "Sir, Maya's one of our best. Fire her." Vincent shouted, slamming his fist on the table. The glasses rattled, wine spilled, and the entire restaurant turned into a silent theater of power. Maya set her tray down gently. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried like thunder. "Before you do, Mr. Cross, maybe you should check your facts." Vincent's eyes narrowed. "What facts?" "That you're shouting orders," she said slowly, "in place you don't own." The billionaire blinked, confused. A flicker of something crossed his face, uncertainty, maybe even fear. Daniel stepped in, trembling. "Mr. Cross, please," but Maya wasn't finished. "You think you can humiliate people because of their uniforms. You think wealth means power. But tell me," her gaze was steady, unflinching, "if I'm nothing, why do you work for me?" The words landed like a thunderclap. The entire restaurant went dead silent. Forks froze midair. Even the pianist stopped playing. Vincent's face drained of color. "What did you just say?" Maya folded her hands neatly in front of her. "You heard me." For a moment, the billionaire looked like he might laugh again, but something in her eyes stopped him. There was no bluff, no hesitation. Only truth. "Wait," he said slowly. "You're joking." She tilted her head. "Do I look like I'm joking?" Daniel's voice cracked. "Maya, what's going on?" She took a deep breath. The tremor in her chest wasn't fear, it was release. 2 months ago, this restaurant was on the verge of shutting down. A new investor saved it. That investor never showed their face. But they made one condition, that I stay on staff. She turned her gaze back to Vincent. "Looks like you didn't read the fine print, employee." The murmurs spread through the room like wildfire. Someone whispered, "She owns it." Another said, "That's impossible." Vincent's smirk crumbled. "You're lying." Maya smiled faintly. "Then check your contract." He reached into his jacket pocket, fumbling for his phone, opening his business app, and there it was, the name of the anonymous holding company that had recently acquired Levain's majority stake, Carter Holdings, LLC. His lips parted. Carter. Maya Carter. The realization hit him like a freight train. The waitress he'd just humiliated was his new boss. Maya turned away quietly, picking up her tray. "Enjoy your meal, Mr. Cross," she said softly, her tone calm and devastating. He watched her walk away, every step echoing like a verdict. The power he thought he had, the dominance he lived by, melted into humiliation. The whispers around him grew louder. People looked at him differently now, not as the untouchable billionaire, but as the fool who shouted at his employer in front of the world. Vincent clenched his fists under the table. His ego screamed to fight back, but his world had shifted. For the first time in years, he didn't have the upper hand. And as Maya disappeared into the kitchen, a single thought burned in his mind like poison. Who exactly is she? And how did she end up owning me? The night after the confrontation, Manhattan buzzed with a rumor too shocking to ignore. By morning, it wasn't a rumor anymore, it was a headline. Billionaire Vincent Cross humiliates waitress. Turns out she owns the restaurant. The story exploded across news sites and social media like wildfire. Everyone had an opinion, every talk show had a clip, and every diner in New York seemed to whisper the same name, Maya Carter. Vincent sat in his penthouse, staring at his phone as his reputation crumbled in real time. His inbox was chaos, investors withdrawing, board members demanding explanations, and PR agents pleading for a public apology. The mighty Vincent Cross, once the golden symbol of corporate power, was now the internet's favorite villain. He slammed his phone on the table. "This is ridiculous," he shouted, pacing the marble floor. "She's a waitress. How the hell did this happen?" His assistant, Erica, stood by the window, afraid to speak. "Sir, technically, she's not just a waitress anymore. She's your employer in the Levain's chain. Her holding company owns 51% of the shares." Vincent turned sharply. "Then buy her out. Name your price." Erica hesitated. "We already tried." She refused. Said something about not selling dignity. His fists clenched. "She's doing this on purpose. She's trying to destroy me." Erica swallowed hard. "Sir, maybe it's time to apologize." "Apologize," he roared. "To a waitress. I built empires while she was scraping tips off tables." But deep down, he wasn't as sure anymore. Something about her confidence that night, that steady, unflinching calm, had rattled him. He'd faced CEOs, senators, even kings, but no one had ever looked at him like that. Not with hate, not with fear, but with pity. Meanwhile, across town, Maya sat in a small, quiet cafe. No cameras, no luxury, just peace. She watched her phone screen light up with notifications, thousands of messages from strangers, hundreds from journalists, and dozens from old coworkers who couldn't believe the story. But none of that mattered to her. She sipped her coffee slowly, lost in thought. Her best friend, Naomi, slid into the chair across from her. "Girl, you broke the internet," Naomi said with a grin. "Do you know who's trending above the president right now?" "You." Maya smiled faintly. "Not sure if that's good or bad." "It's good," Naomi said. "He deserved it." "The way he talked to you like you didn't matter," Maya interrupted softly. "I didn't do it for revenge, Naomi." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Because that look you gave him, that was a power move." Maya sighed, stirring her coffee. "Maybe, but power isn't what he thinks it is. I've seen people like him my whole life, men who think money makes them untouchable. I just wanted him to understand respect can't be bought." Naomi nodded slowly. Still, the world needed to see that moment. Maya looked out the window. "Yeah, but now I'm the story. And when people turn you into a story, they stop seeing the person." At that same moment, in his penthouse office, Vincent was meeting with his legal team. His lawyer, James O'Connell, adjusted his glasses and said, "Vincent, if you don't control this narrative, you're finished. She holds the public's sympathy. You hold the scandal. You need to act now." Vincent leaned forward. "What do you suggest?" "Find leverage," James replied coldly. "If she's got skeletons, dig them up. No one climbs that fast without stepping on someone. You didn't become who you are by playing nice. Don't start now." Vincent's jaw tightened. "So you want me to destroy her reputation?" James shrugged. "Before she destroys yours." Vincent didn't respond, but a dangerous thought was already forming in his mind. By evening, Vincent's team had begun digging into Maya's past, her old jobs, her education, even her late father's name. What they found only deepened the mystery. Maya Carter wasn't just a random waitress. She'd graduated top of her class from Columbia University, disappeared from the business world for 5 years, then suddenly reemerged with enough capital to buy half the restaurant chain Vincent had once courted investors for. Where did she get the money? Vincent muttered, flipping through the files. James smirked. Maybe we should ask her ourselves. But before they could act, Maya made the next move. A letter arrived at Vincent's office the next morning. On top-quality stationery, embossed with Carter Holdings' seal, it was brief but powerful. Mr. Cross, you once told me I was nothing. Consider this your formal notice. Effective immediately, your contract with Levain's has been terminated. Respectfully, Maya Carter, CEO. Carter Holdings, Vincent read it 3 times, his face pale with fury. Terminated. By a woman he'd mocked in front of everyone. He crushed the letter in his fist. She thinks she's won, he whispered. But this isn't over. That night, as Manhattan lights flickered below, he stood by his window, watching the rain hit the glass like tapping fingers. The world might be laughing at him now, but he wasn't done fighting. He'd spent a lifetime building his empire on control, and no one, especially not her, was going to take that away. He turned to Erica. Get me everything on her. Every contact, every deal, every name she's ever worked with. If she wants a war, she's got one. Erica hesitated. Sir, are you sure that's wise? The public, Vincent cut her off. The public forgets. But power doesn't. She embarrassed me in front of the world. Now it's my turn. He didn't notice that as he vowed revenge, his reflection in the glass looked smaller, not like a giant preparing for battle, but a man terrified of losing what little humanity he had left. Across town, Maya sat alone in her modest apartment, staring at the same rain. She knew this wasn't over, but she wasn't afraid, because what Vincent didn't know yet was that his downfall had already been written, long before he ever raised his voice at her. The days following the public humiliation turned into a storm of headlines, lawsuits, and strategy meetings. For Vincent Cross, it wasn't just business anymore, it was personal. He had built an empire on fear and dominance, and now, one woman had turned his name into a punchline. He couldn't let that stand. By the end of the week, Vincent's PR team released a carefully crafted statement. It portrayed him as a misunderstood man, unfairly attacked by a waitress seeking fame. The statement claimed that Maya Carter had staged the entire incident to boost her company's visibility. Within hours, the narrative began to shift. Trolls flooded her social media, calling her a manipulator, a fraud, even a liar. Maya watched it all unfold from her office. Her assistant, Naomi, burst in, phone in hand. They're twisting everything, Maya. Look at this. They're saying you planted fake journalists at Levain's that night. Maya closed her laptop calmly. Of course they are. He's fighting back. Naomi's voice rose. You can't just let him ruin your name. I won't, Maya replied, standing up. But I'm not going to fight him his way. He uses lies. I use truth. She pulled a folder from her drawer, a folder she'd kept hidden for years. Inside were financial documents, contracts, and one particular set of emails that could destroy Vincent's entire reputation. Naomi's eyes widened as she read them. Maya, this is corporate blackmail. Bribery, offshore laundering, this could put him in prison. Maya nodded. My father worked for him 20 years ago. Vincent stole his company, forced him out, and left our family bankrupt. My father died trying to fight him in court. Naomi's face softened. So this is about justice. Maya's voice was quiet but strong. It always was. Meanwhile, in his office at Cross Enterprises, Vincent was in full attack mode. He'd hired private investigators, data analysts, even hackers, all to dig deeper into Maya's past. He wanted proof that she didn't deserve her success, that she'd cheated her way into power. Late that night, his lead investigator, a man named Roger Hill, entered his office carrying a brown envelope. Sir, you might want to see this, he said, sliding it across the desk. Vincent tore it open, expecting gold. What he found instead made his pulse quicken, photos of Maya at charity events, scholarship foundations, and community projects. She wasn't some opportunist. She was beloved. What is this? Vincent snapped. Roger adjusted his tie. Sir, I don't think she's who you think she is. People respect her. She's clean, too clean. No scandals, no debts, nothing. She's everything the media wants to root for. Vincent's jaw tightened. Then find something. Everyone has dirt. But Roger hesitated. I did find one thing, though. It's not dirt, it's history. He pulled out an old photograph, Vincent shaking hands with a man at a ribbon-cutting ceremony 2 decades ago. Recognize him? Vincent frowned. Of course. That's Henry Carter. I bought his company out when, he froze mid-sentence. Carter. Maya Carter. The room suddenly felt colder. His stomach dropped as the realization hit him. She's his daughter. Roger nodded slowly. Looks like it. She's been planning this for years. Vincent's pulse thundered in his ears. He slammed his hand on the desk. She wants revenge. Roger didn't answer. But Vincent could see it now. Every move she'd made, every calm word that night, all part of a long, quiet game. He stood abruptly. She thinks she can play me? His voice trembled with rage. I built this city. I'll burn her empire before she burns mine. But across town, Maya wasn't plotting vengeance. She was preparing evidence. She sat with Naomi and her lawyer, carefully documenting every email, every forged signature, every shady transfer that Vincent had buried over the years. Her plan wasn't destruction, it was exposure. Once this goes public, her lawyer warned, he'll come after you harder. He won't stop until he ruins you. Maya looked up, her eyes steady. He already tried to. Now I'm fighting for every person he's destroyed along the way. 2 days later, Vincent woke up to a nightmare. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. His lawyer's voice cracked through the speaker. Vincent, it's bad. Carter Holdings just released evidence of illegal tax shelters tied to your company. The IRS is involved. Vincent sat up, disbelief flooding his face. What? It's everywhere, Vincent. The media has copies of the emails. You're trending again, but not the way you want. He threw the phone against the wall, breathing hard. He couldn't believe it. She'd beaten him at his own game. By noon, the stock price of Cross Enterprises had dropped 15%. By evening, sponsors had pulled out of 2 of his biggest projects. His empire was shaking. Not because of a market crash, not because of a scandal he could spin, but because a woman he'd once called nothing had hit him with the truth. Later that night, he drove aimlessly through the city, rain pouring across his windshield. For the first time, he didn't feel like a king, he felt lost. Everything he'd built was slipping away, and the woman who'd caused it wasn't celebrating. She was silent. That silence cut deeper than any insult. As he parked by the Hudson River, the same thought kept repeating in his head. How did I let her get this far? But deep inside, beneath the rage and humiliation, another thought began to whisper, one he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Maybe she's not my enemy. Maybe she's what I should have been. Still, Vincent wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet, because for men like him, surrender wasn't in their vocabulary. He lit a cigar, stared at the stormy skyline, and muttered to himself, if it's war she wants, it's war she'll get. But next time, I'm not just fighting for power. I'm fighting for my pride. What he didn't realize was that the next move Maya would make wouldn't destroy his pride, it would shatter his heart. The storm that night seemed endless. Sheets of rain lashed against glass towers as if the heavens themselves were furious. Inside his penthouse, Vincent Cross sat in darkness, the city lights flickering below like dying embers. His empire, once untouchable, was collapsing one headline at a time. Every channel played his downfall. Billionaire under investigation. Cross Enterprises faces federal inquiry. Ex-waitress turned CO exposes corruption. His name had become poison. Friends who once lined up to toast champagne with him now ignored his calls. Business partners vanished overnight. He poured himself a drink, hands shaking. She took everything, he muttered. Everything. But what haunted him most wasn't the loss of money or status. It was that moment in the restaurant. Her calm voice. Her eyes, steady and unafraid. The way she'd said, "Then why do you work for me?" It echoed in his mind like a ghost that refused to leave. He smashed the glass against the wall, shards scattering across marble. "No one talks to me like that," he whispered. "No one." Down in the streets, meanwhile, Maya Carter was sitting in a meeting room, surrounded by her team. News reporters had camped outside her office all morning, hungry for another quote. The world now saw her as a symbol, the woman who'd brought down a corrupt billionaire. But that wasn't how Maya felt. She rubbed her temples, exhaustion etched across her face. "This isn't victory," she said quietly. "It's noise." Naomi frowned. "Noise? Maya, you exposed one of the most ruthless men in corporate America. People are calling you a hero." "I didn't do this to be a hero," Maya replied. "I did it so no one else would have to go through what my father did. But I didn't want chaos." She turned toward the window, watching the rain. And somehow, that's all I've created. Her lawyer, Mr. Lawson, adjusted his glasses. Maya, you've been summoned for an official statement with the federal investigators tomorrow. They'll need every document you have. Are you sure you're ready for this? Maya nodded slowly. Yes. I'm done hiding. The truth deserves daylight. But even as she said it, something in her chest tightened, a strange pull she couldn't explain. It wasn't fear. It was pity. For Vincent. She hated what he'd done, yes. But she couldn't forget the look in his eyes that night, when he realized the tables had turned. Behind the arrogance, she'd seen something broken. Something lonely. That night, Vincent sat alone in his penthouse, surrounded by silence. His assistant Erica had left hours ago after he'd yelled at her for the last time. His lawyer wasn't answering. Even his mother's number went to voicemail. He stared at the framed photo on his desk, a much younger version of himself shaking hands with Henry Carter, Maya's father. Back then, Vincent had been ambitious, hungry to make his mark. Henry had been his mentor. They'd built something great together. Until greed poisoned it. Vincent's throat tightened. You were supposed to be my friend, he whispered to the photo. I didn't mean for it to end like that. But deep down, he knew he had. He'd stolen Henry's company in a merger disguised as rescue funding. When Henry died of a heart attack 2 years later, Vincent told himself it was just business. But now, sitting in silence, the word business felt like a curse. His phone buzzed, an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mr. Cross. A calm, familiar voice. It's Maya. His heart stopped. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, you've got some nerve calling me. I'm not calling to argue, Maya said. I'm calling to end this. He laughed bitterly. End it. You destroyed me, Maya. What else is there to end? I didn't destroy you, she replied softly. You did that yourself. I just showed the truth. Vincent's voice trembled with fury. You think you're better than me? You think you're some moral savior? No, she said, her tone calm but sad. I think I'm someone who finally stopped being afraid of men like you. There was silence, thick, heavy silence. Vincent leaned back, staring at the ceiling. So what now? You want me in prison. You want to see me rot. Maya took a breath. I don't want revenge. I want change. Admit what you did. Cooperate with the investigators. Tell the truth, Vincent. Not for me, for yourself. He barked out a laugh. The truth? You have no idea what that costs. Then maybe that's the only thing left worth paying for, she said. And before he could respond, she hung up. Vincent sat there, staring at the phone, her words ringing in his ears. For the first time in his life, the silence around him felt like judgment. Every lie, every betrayal, every cruel decision, all of it had led to this. Hours passed. He wandered into his office, the city glowing beneath him. Rain streaked the glass like tears. On his desk, the contract he'd stolen from Henry Carter years ago still sat in a locked drawer, a relic of his sins. He opened it and stared at the signature, his own name beside Henry's. His hands trembled. He realized with brutal clarity that Maya hadn't destroyed him out of hate. She'd exposed him out of truth. And now, that truth was breaking him apart. By dawn, Vincent made a decision. He dressed in his gray suit, not for war this time, but for surrender. He took the folder, the real one, with every falsified document, every lie, and placed it in his briefcase. He called Erica. Set a meeting with the federal agents, he said quietly. And tell them, I'm ready to talk. Erica's shocked silence said everything. Sir, are you sure? Vincent looked out at the sunrise piercing through the clouds. Yeah, he whispered. It's time. But as he hung up, his reflection in the glass looked older, smaller, like a man finally facing the truth he'd buried for too long. Across town, Maya watched the same sunrise, unaware that the man she'd once despised had just decided to change everything. The war wasn't over, but something inside both of them had shifted. And what came next would test not just their power, but their humanity. Morning light poured through the shattered windows of the restaurant's office, illuminating the chaos that had once been Alara's sanctuary. But for the first time in weeks, she wasn't crying, she was planning. The humiliation, the betrayal, the sleepless nights, all of it had burned away into something sharper, colder. She was done being the victim. While Grant strutted on magazine covers, declaring himself the savior of the Era Group, Alara was quietly laying the groundwork for her counterattack. She'd gone to the very heart of his empire, the suppliers, the investors, the employees he'd underpaid and overworked. Her calm voice and fearless eyes drew them in. "You all built this company," she told them, "not him. He used your sweat and called it his vision." It started small, one supplier refusing to ship until overdue payments were made. Then another threatened to pull out. The whispers spread like wildfire. Within 2 weeks, the foundation of Grant's empire began to tremble. Ilara, meanwhile, registered her own startup, Lumiere Dining Group, named after the French word for light. She poured every last dollar, every hour of her broken nights into making it shine. Her first restaurant opened in a renovated warehouse, minimalist, modern, and filled with warmth. The staff were people like her, single mothers, ex-convicts, and dreamers no one believed in. The menu was simple, honest food, no pretense, no ego. Just care. On opening night, the place was packed. Cameras flashed. Influencers raved. Even customers from Grant's old empire lined up around the block. When the critic from Modern Taste wrote, "Ilara Hart's kitchen feeds not just the body but the soul," it became the line that broke Grant's pride. He called her. The same voice that once shouted, "You're nothing," now sounded crack hollow. "You think you can beat me with one restaurant?" he sneered. Ilara's laughter was soft but steady. "I don't need to beat you, Grant. I just need to remind the world who really built everything you stole." But Grant wasn't done. He launched a smear campaign, hiring trolls, spreading lies about health violations, even bribing a few journalists to discredit her. For a moment, it worked. Bookings dropped. Sponsors hesitated. Her staff feared losing everything again. That night, Ilara gathered them in the kitchen. "He's scared," she said. "He's fighting dirty because he knows we're winning. We won't quit, we'll rise higher." One of her chefs, a young man named Malik who'd once been homeless, raised his hand. "Miss Ilara," he said, "I'll work double shifts if I have to. You gave me a second chance. I won't let him take that from us." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they weren't from pain, they were from pride. Together, they stayed late into the night, perfecting new dishes, cleaning every surface, and creating something Grant could never understand: loyalty born of respect. A week later, a video surfaced online. It was leaked security footage, Grant yelling at his staff, berating them, threatening to fire them for loyalty to the wrong people. It spread like wildfire. The internet turned on him overnight. Investors fled. Lawsuits followed. Meanwhile, Ilara's story went viral. From waitress to warrior, the woman who built an empire after losing everything. Morning shows called her a symbol of strength. Young women quoted her in their graduation speeches. Her restaurants expanded across states, and soon, Lumiere Dining was valued higher than Grant's entire portfolio. Then came the ultimate twist, one that no one saw coming. A prestigious investors' conference in New York invited both Ilara and Grant to speak. The organizers had no idea of their shared history, or perhaps they did. When Grant arrived, he strutted in, expecting applause. But when the host introduced the keynote speaker as CEO of Lumiere Group, Ms. Ilara Hart, the room erupted in cheers. Grant's face drained of color as Ilara walked onto the stage in a sleek black suit, confidence radiating from every step. She met his eyes and smiled, not with vengeance but with victory. She began, "Once, I worked for a man who told me I was nothing, that I didn't belong at the table. But I learned something powerful. When they don't give you a seat, build your own table. And make it so strong that even they'll need an invitation." The crowd rose to its feet. Cameras flashed. Grant lowered his gaze, realizing the full weight of her words. Ilara had risen, not by destroying him, but by becoming everything he could never be. The applause from the investors' conference still echoed in Ilara's ears long after the event ended. She stood backstage, shoulders trembling, not from fear but from release. Years of humiliation, betrayal, and struggle had finally melted into one moment of triumph. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to breathe. Deeply, freely. As she exited the venue, a familiar voice called from behind. "Ilara." She turned. It was Grant. Gone was the swagger, the arrogance, the perfectly tailored mask. His tie was loose, his hair unkempt, and there was something fragile in his expression. A man realizing the empire he built on cruelty had crumbled beneath his own weight. "I didn't come here to fight," he said softly. "I came to understand how you did it, how you turned everything around after what I did to you." Ilara studied him for a long moment. "You really don't know, do you?" she said, her tone calm but cutting. "I didn't build my success out of spite, Grant. I built it out of pain. Out of nights you thought you'd broken me. Every insult, every door you slammed, it became a brick in my foundation. He looked down, unable to meet her eyes. I ruined everything. I just wanted to win. No, she replied gently. You wanted control, and that's what destroyed you. He nodded slowly, almost shamefully. I read the article about you. From waitress to CEO. I didn't even recognize the woman in those photos. You look happy. I am, she said simply. Because I stopped letting people like you define my worth. There was a long silence. The noise of the city outside hummed like a distant tide. Then Grant asked, if you could go back, would you change it? What happened between us? Ilara thought for a moment. Her lips curved into a faint, bittersweet smile. No, because if I hadn't fallen, I wouldn't have learned how to rise. Grant swallowed hard. You're stronger than I ever was. She gave a small nod. No, Grant. I'm just done being afraid. He walked away quietly, disappearing into the blur of New York traffic, a man stripped of ego, carrying the ashes of what once made him powerful. That night, Ilara returned to her restaurant. The staff was celebrating another major milestone. Lumiere Dining had just been featured as America's most inspiring company on Forbes. Balloons hung from the ceiling, music filled the air, and laughter echoed through the space. When she walked in, the room fell silent. Speech, someone shouted. Ilara stepped forward, smiling at her team, her family. You all know where this started, she began, with a waitress who was told she was nothing. But look at us now. Every person in this room was told at some point they weren't good enough. But tonight, we prove that no one gets to write our story except us. The crowd erupted in cheers. Malik, the young chef she'd mentored, raised a toast. To Ilara, our light, our leader. Glasses clinked. Cameras flashed. But in the middle of the celebration, Ilara slipped away to the quiet rooftop terrace. The city lights stretched before her, endless and alive. She looked up at the stars, remembering the girl she once was, the one scrubbing tables in silence, the one who cried behind dumpsters after another cruel word from her boss. That girl was gone, but she'd built the woman who stood here now. A soft knock broke her thoughts. It was her assistant, Maya, holding an envelope. This just arrived for you, she said, smiling knowingly. Ilara opened it. Inside was a single line written in elegant penmanship, to the one who taught me what real power looks like. Gee, Ilara folded the note gently. No anger, no bitterness, just closure. She tucked it away and whispered, Goodbye, Grant. From that night forward, her journey took on a new purpose. She began hosting mentorship programs for young women in hospitality, teaching them not just how to lead kitchens, but how to lead lives. She visited community colleges, sharing her story. Success, she told them, isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your voice. Years passed. Lumiere grew into an international brand, restaurants in Paris, Dubai, and Los Angeles, all bearing her signature warmth. Her story became a legend, retold in business schools and documentaries. But to Ilara, the real victory wasn't fame, it was peace. One evening, she returned to her first restaurant. It was quiet now, the lights dimmed, the smell of fresh bread in the air. She sat at her favorite corner table, tracing her fingers over the wood grain, remembering the countless nights she'd cried there. Malik walked in, older now, successful in his own right. He smiled. You ever think about how far you've come? Ilara chuckled. Every day. But I also think about where it all began. He nodded. You turned pain into power, Miss Ilara. That's something none of us will ever forget. She looked out the window, where the city skyline shimmered like a promise. Maybe that's what life's about, she said softly. Turning every "you're nothing" into a reason to rise. As the camera of destiny panned out from that small, glowing restaurant window, her story stood complete, a tale not of revenge, but of redemption, strength, and grace. And as the credits of her life's chapter rolled in silent triumph, her voice lingered like a whisper to everyone watching. Never let anyone decide your value. Even if they call you nothing, rise and show them why they were wrong. If this story touched your heart, tell me, what city are you watching from? Speech Balloon, and don't forget to subscribe, because every story here reminds you, no matter who doubts you, you can rise higher than they ever imagined. Globe showing America's fire.